Hey, it's Spoonie, and it's time for the December update for Kitten Space Agency, the spiritual successor to Kerbal Space Program created by Dean Hall and a team over at RocketWerkz that includes the creator of Kerbal Space Program, Harvester, but also several influential people from the Kerbal Space Program community like Blackrak, Daishi, and several other seriously talented individuals. And guys, I know I have said this before, but this is seriously the biggest update yet. Because now you can actually play the game for yourself and see just how incredible the work being done on this thing really is so far. But before we get into all that, if you haven't already, please consider hitting that subscribe button and helping me reach my goal of ending this year with 5,000 subscribers. I'm getting pretty close, but the end of the year is rapidly approaching and I need your help to push me over that last hill. If this is your first time hearing about Kitten Space Agency, I have put together a small recap that should bring you up to speed and help answer a few questions you might have about this game. It also covers a few of the key concepts that will help you more easily follow along with what's being talked about in this video. If this isn't your first time hearing about Kitten Space Agency, as always, you can just skip ahead to the chapter titled New Updates. First, this game is meant to be the spiritual successor to Kerbal Space Program 2. It is being built from the ground up on a custom framework called Brutal designed specifically for this game. Brutal gives the developers full control over just about everything and allows them to quickly experiment with new features and ideas, like shadows from moons on planets, which went from conception to proof of concept implementation in just 3 hours. Yes, there will be mod support. In fact, this game is being developed with mod support as a cornerstone, and everything in the game is essentially a mod itself which can be altered. The game will have multiplayer, and the groundwork for this feature is being baked into the game so that it can be more easily added when the time comes. We don't know if it will launch with this feature, but we do know that they are planning for it. The game will have interstellar travel. The game will also be DRM free, meaning you will not have to have an internet connection to play the game. The game will also, at least ideally, be free to play. This is still a little bit up in the air as the developers will obviously need to make money from the game. It may be through a pay what you want system or other voluntary support. We will have to wait for further clarification down the road, but we do know that Dean Hall very much wants this game to be released for free. While we don't have a lot of information on system requirements just yet, the game seems to already be incredibly performant, with at least some of the work being tested on a 2080 Super at 1440p, often achieving an FPS in the hundreds. This is a good sign that you probably won't need a 5090 to play this game at the higher settings with a decent frame rate. This performance boost is in part thanks to a system of rendering called spherical billboards, which swaps out pre-rendered meshes as you approach an orbital body rather than rendering them in real time. You will be able to seamlessly switch from ship view to orbital view or to another ship around another body without the need for loading screens thanks to the utilization of instantiable physics and the Brutal framework, which allows everything to play by its own set of rules rather than everything being tied together in a persistent scene. This also gives the modders a straightforward path to adding, editing, or completely remaking systems. And those are the key points which I hope will answer a lot of the questions those who are new to the game might have. And now, on to the new updates. We got several updates from Blackrak this month. Firstly, this incredible look at an animated 2D texture that allows the swirling bands of Jupiter to be seen on the map view as well as from distant orbits. And it really is the little touches like these that give me a lot of confidence in the final product. There really aren't any shortcuts at all being taken here when making this game. This is easily something that could have been left out, and honestly, I doubt a lot of people would have noticed, and even fewer would have complained. But it's the little things like this that really add up and make the game feel more immersive and more real. And speaking of real, we got an introduction to Stefan Molov. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. One of the programmers working on KSA that has nearly 12 years of experience working on real-world aerospace projects. That is an actual rocket scientist working on this game. We also got to meet JPL Repo, aka Jamie, who was a lead engineer on Kerbal Space Program, but is also one of the few people who has worked on all 3 projects. Kerbal Space Program, KSP2, as well as now KSA. Next, Blackrak gave us a look at some of the work being done on anti-aliasing and depth buffer effects. He explains that one of the difficult parts of working with multi-sample anti-aliasing is handling the depth buffer. For those that don't know, anti-aliasing is the process of smoothing jagged edges on rendered objects. Some effects simply cannot be super sampled efficiently, and to handle those cases, they have implemented a new method that still does transparencies at 1 sample per pixel and then reassembles them with the multi-sampled image in a manner that is subsample aware. We can see here in these examples where the left side of the image shows the before and the right side shows the after. Huge improvement, and from a technical standpoint should make things more efficient and look a lot crisper for rendered parts and textures. He also showed off a new video demonstrating cloud upscaling and motion handling improvements. Whereas previously, a thin cloud that passed over a thick one would produce a final motion vector that was a flawed average of both. But now the system will prioritize the most visually significant cloud layer and use neighboring data to keep motion vectors consistent at the edges. This video shows the before and after of these improvements. Again, it's really hard to emphasize just how difficult clouds are to create in a believable way. So as always, this is really impressive work. Next, Windhoek showed us a new engine designer that allows users to play around with thrusters and better understand what parameters mean through their experimentation. This data can be exported to help modders and is accessed through the debug menu. Lynx also gave us an update on ray tracing, or rather, what ray tracing can be used for other than, well, ray tracing. In this instance, the ray tracing cores will be used for ground clutter and surface scatter generation. An important note here is that you will not need ray tracing capable hardware to run this game, and the processes will fall back to traditional ray traversal using BVH. This is fast, it just isn't hardware accelerated the way that ray tracing is. Doom the Dark Ages did something very similar with ray tracing cores for bullet hit detection. The reason for this is that spherical billboards present certain challenges stemming from Planet's mesh not being a static mesh as it would be in other similar games. So now they have multiple methods of finding the exact height field for potential surface objects that are performant and can be run often. Dicey also showed off some more parts getting their textures added, and this time it's a collection of smaller boosters roughly the size of Hunter, the name of the first catstronaut. And fun fact, that cat was given the name because Dean once had a pet cat named Hunter. And speaking of Hunter, he is also no longer alone in space. We were introduced to Polaris and Banjo this month as well. Next, we got one of the coolest updates of the month from Windhoek, where he wrote up an explanation for the various planet-related coordinate frames that are used in KSA, and he even made visual references for each one. This explains in great detail the systems that are used to create and maintain celestial objects in this game, and will no doubt be an invaluable resource for modders hoping to create their own planets and systems. In fact, while reading through this explanation of the frames used, it is extremely clear that all of this was done with the community in mind, so that modders would be able to implement their own realistic planetary systems without having to hire their very own rocket scientists to help out. Next, Blackrat gave us another incredible update on long-distance cloud self-shadowing and God rays. Now, clouds will be able to utilize a dedicated shadowing system to self-shadow over long distances, and the various cloud layers will cast shadows on one another. This naturally creates God rays and just generally gives the clouds an even more realistic look, as if that were possible at this point. These cloud systems are insane, and in the best way possible. Admittedly, this month things were a bit light from the standpoint of developer updates, but that shouldn't be a surprise to anyone as they are more or less inundated with bug reports and the mountain of feedback that they have no doubt received these last few weeks since the pre-alpha went live. There is a ton of incredible work being done on Brutal, for example, and just by the very nature of it, it's difficult to put on display. But that doesn't mean that this month hasn't been huge. Because if you skipped over the entire beginning and somehow missed it, the game's pre-alpha build is now out for everyone to try for themselves. I'll get to exactly how you can access the game for yourself here in just a moment, but first I think it's important to manage some expectations, because what you're getting access to is somewhere between a tech demo for the Brutal framework and a pre-alpha build of the game. What that means is that there are going to be bugs, crashes, and plenty of ways to break this game entirely. But if you ask me, that's part of the fun. So download it, open up the debug editor, play with the new parts by pressing Shift-E, and see just how far you can push the waves and cloud settings before you're forced to restart the game just to get things back to normal. It's totally free to download and play, but just because the game is free doesn't mean that development is. So if you can't afford to, please consider contributing to the project and supporting this incredible development team. This is really your chance to show that games don't need to have DRM or microtransactions to be successful. And if you play it and don't think it's worth money just yet, be sure to come back and contribute once you feel it has earned your support. To both download and contribute, you can head over to awoo.com, put a link to that down in the description below, and if you're feeling extra supportive today, you can also support me and this channel by hitting that like button, subscribing to my channel to help me reach my end of year goals, or by joining my other channel members for early access to new podcast episodes and other members only videos. To all of my current and future members, thank you for your support. It truly means the world to me. And about that podcast, I have one. It's called Chaos in the Lobby, and we discuss gaming adjacent topics as well as some of the more human interest parts of game development. So far, I have sat down with some incredible guests like Dean Hall himself, Harvester, the creator of Kerbal Space Program, Nate Simpson, the creative director of Kerbal Space Program 2, Jake, the solo developer of an amazing city builder called Songs of Six, and some other influential people like Matt Lown and Shadowzone. I also have a lot of really exciting guests coming up with new episodes almost every Friday, so be sure to check it out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.